All right. Hello and welcome to our session on Local NewsBot Studio report. Um, this is our new report from the Center for Innovation and Sustainability in Local Media, housed in the Journalism School at UNC. We will go through a little bit about this report, the findings from it, and key insights and takeaways for the future. So this is our cover for our project. This is our 2025 report on AI chatbot usages in local newsrooms. This is a really cool experimental project that we're proud of. It's the first of its kind in terms of our research like this that develops products to test for newsrooms, insights, and actionable takeaways. So when we developed this program, we did this for a few reasons. The main reason was to help news organizations experiment with chatbots. We know that there's a lot of interest in experimenting with AI and chatbots in general. We know that there's a lot of programs out there, especially from the funding side and from the journalism support organization side, really encouraging local newsrooms to experiment with AI and different ways they can implement them. But we wanted to know what local newsrooms thought about that. And importantly, we wanted to know what local news consumers thought about that as well. So we designed this project to really test how news consumers wanted to interact with AI in newsrooms. How this works, so we had a pretty quick turnaround for this project. We started, I think with any good project, it starts with a need and to solve a problem. And so our team met with news organizations across the Southeast to determine the need, what they wanted to what problems they wanted to solve in their news organizations, what would even be possible, what would even be interesting to them. So we had a lot of really great conversations um, with newsrooms about how we could help. After identifying a few potential options, my colleague Yanan and I, we built chatbots using Zapier and Google Sheets to help meet those needs. And we chose Zapier because it is a really great product for a low lift, front facing um, platform, basically. We were able to embed it. It was pretty easy to install. Zapier does a lot of the integration that we needed. So we really enjoy working with them for this project. After we built a beta project, we sent that to the newsrooms, and on their end and on our end, we developed a testing product where we tried to really hard to make sure that the results from these chatbots were accurate and they were helpful. And so we would adjust the chatbots in those way using that feedback. After that, we asked the news organizations to install on their website using the embed code that Zapier provides. Um, Using Zapier, these chatbots would run for about a month, and we were able to set it up where through Zapier as well, we were able to capture the conversations from all of these users and import them into a spreadsheet so that we had access to every conversation that was happening. And it was really important to us that these chatbots only use the knowledge base. That was really essential in us limiting the number of hallucinations that we were finding and really encouraging these chatbots to only provide accurate information rather than making up information on the spot or by searching the web. So we worked with four really wonderful newsrooms for this chatbot project. Um, and we worked with them in a variety of ways too. So from North Carolina, we worked with Chapelboro, which is also WHCL, a local news radio station that also has a really robust online presence. And we worked with the News Reporter down in Whiteville, North Carolina. They're a legacy newspaper. They have a really wonderful subscription base, and they've been around for a long time as well. And then throughout the Southeast, we work with Henrico Citizen, based on Henrico County in Virginia, right outside of Richmond, and Atlanta Civic Circle, which is a really wonderful digital nonprofit newsroom of course, based in Atlanta. These chatbots did a variety of different things. Um, for example, the news reporter, one of their biggest challenges is they're a small team, and a lot of their news audience is used to engaging with the news reporter via in person through their front desk or on the phone by calling. And they were experiencing a lot of the same kind of questions, such as how can I update my membership? How can I change my credit card on file? I'd like to get the paper once a week instead of a few times a week. How can I do that? So they were really interested in a product that was more customer service facing. Um, there, on the flip side, Atlanta Civic Circle was interested in a really beat specific focus. They wanted to create a chatbot that was able to compile a lot of election information, such as who's running, um, what are the latest stories about the candidates, why does this election matter, for example. In Atlanta, they go through elections every single year, and having updated civic information is really helpful as well as answering the same kind of questions that appear over and over again. And then Henrico and Chapelboro both used kind of a combination of the two chatbots. So they had some customer service elements in it, such as how can I update my membership, how can I subscribe to the newsletter, etc. But they also had more content-based information as well. So you could ask Chappie from Chapelboro, for example, who is Bill Belichick? And that will come up with a lot of recent reporting about Bill Belichick. Um, and so with that, we deployed these four products, and we were really intrigued to find the answers from those. And again, our timeline was pretty quick on this, and so we're really grateful for all of the flexibility from the newsrooms in working with us. In early April, we started to reach out to the newsrooms and have those conversations with them to determine what kind of products would make sense. By the end of April, we had sent the chatbots to the newsroom so that they could play with it and provide feedback. And then we made changes from that feedback and helped with the installation on their websites. In early May, all of these chatbots were deployed and running on the homepage, and in some cases, additional pages on these websites. And we let the chatbots run for a month, with the research collection ending at the end of June. And I will turn it over to Yanan for more on the findings.
All right, thank you so much for your introduction, Sarah. As we said, through this program, we want to understand two parts. One is how user interact with these kinds of chatbot, especially for local news readers. So we can know that from the conversation data we collected. It shows how newsroom consumer of this newsroom will interact with this kinds of chatbot and help us rethink the role of what an AI chatbot can and cannot play in local newsroom. The other part is the newsroom insight. For all these newsroom who adapt AI in their workflow for the first time, they have a lot of valuable reflection and takeaways to share. So first off, we'll start with the user interaction part. The chatbot received 185 inquiry sessions in total. This is between May 1st and June 15th, with a span of 45 days. And the data set include user input, chatbot responses, and a timestamp. No any other information or private information included. Next page. Okay, so by look at all these, we see a few very obvious patterns here. First, we found that the conversation with the chatbot tends to end really fast. Only 41% of the session include more than one question, meaning that about more than a half of the conversation were likely to be user ask a question and then the chatbot answer, and then that's the end of the conversation. That led us to rethink what the chatbot want to get out of what the newsroom want to get out of the chatbot. If it is a tool that answer users' question quickly, it probably did a good job because when people leave, it might be because they didn't have a question anymore. But on the other hand, user may also want it to the chatbot to improve the user engagement or boost user interaction. In that case, we don't want the conversation to, end so fast. And then how to keep user engaged is always a good question to ask. But we did see an obvious difference between content-based chatbot and customer service type of chatbot. About 43% of the conversation with content-based chatbot include more than one question, which is much higher than compared to customer service type of chatbot, which mostly have no follow-up question at all. And the plot here on the left show the average number of question per session for each different chatbot. And for content-based chatbots specifically, we also analyze what questions were asked by users. And we found that most questions were about reporting and some about the newsroom too. But they also get creative with some other questions. And here's the breakdown of question received by Chapel Barrel's chatbot. You can see that about 20% of the total question were about community event and 19% about local government and the newsroom itself, respectively, and 60% of them are about sports. There are some other questions that are touch on higher education, specifically on UNC-related topic, and some even ask about the chatbot's own capability. And besides those majority, a smaller portion of the query also diverge from news altogether, which include topics such as math, poetry, cooking, and some even archival access. And again, there's a breakdown of the ACC's chatbots question. Because Atlanta Civic Circle's coverage is mostly about local politics, and so did the chatbot. They wanted the chatbot to be a politics explainer too. So as we can see here, the question received by ACC's chatbot is more concentrate on local politics. About 39% of the question were about city official, and 26% were about elections, and 8% about local government. There were also some outliers inquiry that are straight from the core editorial scope. Some users ask about Doge, finance, and specifically school board activities. And a unique pattern emerged for Hanko Citizens chatbot. About a half of the question were about the chatbot itself. The chatbot for Hanko Citizen has a really person-like name called Henry, and so a lot of people ask who is Henry, which is about the chatbot itself. And 30% of the inquiries was also about advertising with Henrico Citizen. As we mentioned, they adopt a kind of a combined version of customer service and content-based chatbot. So we are really surprised to see that most of them are about the chatbot itself and how to advertise with the newsroom. And there's also a 13% question about local government. And more about question asked by readers. A common pattern involved across all four chatbot is asking for a news feed directly to the chatbot. So, for example, 7 question with Chapel Borough's chatbot included the latest reporting and the most recent article about some topic and some similar request. And for a content-based chatbot, what is how most questions start with? Meaning, I think that's indicate that users are trying to make sense of something, including getting a definition such as what does the sheriff do? Or asking about facts, like what is happening this week downtown, or even sometimes opinion, like what do you think is the best restaurant in town? But contrarily, for ACC's politics explainer chatbot, 31% of the questions actually start with how, meaning that for politic explainer chatbot, more users are looking for actionable insight or some guidance. Maybe they're looking for like how to vote or how to run, etc. And for customer service chatbot, which in this case is the news reporter's product, user interacted with chatbot with a more focused purpose. So more than 90% of the question were about general inquiries such as subscription management, how to submit a tip, or how to submit a obituary. And we also include some prompt question for each of the chatbot. As you can see in the picture here, Newsroom designed several questions just to show user what kinds of questions the chatbot can ask, or just share some question that readers might be interested in asking. That vary based on like each chatbot's purpose. For example, for the news reporters chatbot, a lot of them are logistic or some basic guidelines about how to manage subscription, etc. And for ACC's chatbot, much of them are about local politics and related question. And we found that prompt question does influence users' engagement, and with usage rate vary widely based on across newsroom, depending on the number and relevance of the question provided. And here's a breakdown of the number of conversation with prompt question. We found that approximately 34% of users click on the prompt question rather than ask their own, means that we think that means actually the prompt question provided by the newsroom does sometimes interest users or fit users' needs. And we also found it is very interesting to see the disparity between prompt question usage of different newsroom. As you can see here, Travel Bureau has a really low percentage of conversation with prompt questions, means that users tend to ask their own question instead of just click on the prompt question. And for ACC and the news reporter, about 1 in 3 question use a prompt question. However, for Henrico Citizen, they have a really high percentage of prompt question usage. And last but not the least, we also try to examine how effective the chatbot is by looking at the answer provided by the chatbot. As we mentioned before, we prefigure the chatbot to use only the prefigured knowledge base, which is mostly composed of the material from the newsrooms themselves instead of search in the whole internet. This is just to reduce the risk of hallucination. However, when there is no related information to the question by the users, usually the chatbot will answer, "I don't know." So that means even if some question seems very intuitive, like the one on the red, if you ask ACC's chatbot, "Who is the president of the United States?" Even though it seems like a common sense that everyone should know, but because there's no direct reporting about the president of the United States, the chatbot will answer, "I don't have that knowledge in my knowledge base, and so I can't answer that." But if you ask who is the mayor of Atlanta, the chatbot for sure will be able to answer that, even though I don't personally even know the answer. But that is to say, there is a trade-off between the risk of hallucination and answering and not knowing the answer to users' question. And we found that about 32% of the total conversation included at least one unanswered question. In that case, that triggered a fallback response like, "I don't know." So I think this is a relatively high percentage, means 1 in 3 question at least were not answered by the chatbot. However, we agree with all these newsrooms that we always prioritize the accuracy and truthfulness of the information we provided rather than, rather than like in reverse prioritize like how many questions we can actually answer. And then moving on to more of the newsroom insight, we found some common reflection emerge from all four newsroom. First off, all four newsrooms said they were really surprised about how quickly the chatbot can be built. These newsroom did not have an experience with AI as an organization before this program, and we spent almost a week for building and almost 10 days or to 2 week for testing. And this is relatively a quick turnaround. Although this product is not perfect, but they are still very surprised about how quickly it can be built. And the cost for the chatbot with Zapier is $40 per month, which is relatively affordable for all these newsroom. So as you said, they're really surprised about how affordable and how quickly the chatbot can be built in this case. And also, all four newsrooms said the search function on their website was not very satisfying. This is very, very common across all four newsrooms. They all mentioned that some of the search function on their website are broken, and they would really want to optimize the search function on their website in order for readers to access their earlier reporting instead of just the most up-to-date information. And two teams specifically hope that the chatbot could be used as an alternative to the internal search bar for the website. We believe this is a very promising option. Even though we only built the current version of the chatbot based on a limited scope or portion of their existing archive. However, we do think that there is a promise that a chatbot can be used as a alternative of the internal search bar. And all four teams also mentioned that a common downside for the chatbot was that it couldn't respond to all the questions. As I briefly touched on earlier, this is a sort of a trade-off question between prioritizing the accuracy versus, the ability to respond to all the questions without that you can pull from information across the internet. We don't currently have a perfect solution for that, but I think that's something that worth exploring more in the future studies. And then continue on some reflection. Spring Newsroom said automatically updating the chatbot's knowledge base with new content as articles are published was valuable. So during this program, we've been maintaining a static database, which means that we put together the database at the beginning of the running period, but we did not add new content as the new content were published on each newsroom. I think this approach works relatively fine for the customer service type of chatbot because it have a relatively static source of information. However, for a content-based chatbot, the key is to provide the most up-to-date and accurate information timely. So the ability to do that might be essential for this type of chatbot, which requires timely putting together, adding the new archive and prioritizing the new archive. And two newsroom, Herrinco Citizen and the news reporter, said the time and effort for maintaining and updating the chatbot poses a significant challenge. We do recognize that because most of the newsrooms do not have a standalone archive of their reporting. They mostly use their website as an archive. So that means in order to put together some new and updated material, you have to manually collect them or through some automation scraping to collect them and then put them into the database. And that usually require much time than a lot of the newsroom has. So that can be a challenges if moving forward. And two newsroom, Chapel Borough and Heracles Citizen, found that the chatbot useful for basic static information like navigating guidance on the website. That's also echo what I just said about for a customer service type of chatbot, this is not so challenging because most of the information sources for customer service chatbot are some general guidelines that is mostly static. And I think some newsroom also one of our team also aim for more basic and more limited function of the chatbot, which means it might be able to play better. And I think that's all for now for our overview. And we also, in our original report, there's more reflection from each of the newsroom. We all have in-depth conversation and interview with all these newsroom. And if you would like to find out more about their reflection, our findings, and AI in journalism resources, definitely check out our local news report. And thank you for listening.